Welcome to First Coat, where we explore public realm art, how it's made, and why it matters. I'm your host, Stephanie Echeveste, an artist and entrepreneur based in Brooklyn, New York. I run Distill Creative, where I curate and produce site-specific art projects for real estate developers. This week on First Coat, we have artist Perri Rhoden. Perri is a Seattle native and has recently taken the leap to being a full-time artist. I spoke with Perri about her work on a giant Black Lives Matter mural in Seattle, her transition to being a full-time artist, and the importance of self-care. You'll learn about how Perri started painting murals, how she makes money, and what is giving her hope right now. We also talk about capitalism and the Black Lives Matter movement in relationship to art, social media, and a whole lot more. Here's our conversation. Hi.
Hi, Stephanie.
Thanks for doing this podcast interview.
Of course. I'm excited.
Can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Of course. My name is Perri Rhoden. I'm a visual artist and muralist. I'm based in Seattle, Washington. I've been creating art for the last 8 years. This year, I started doing murals. I think anytime you move into a new medium, there's a level of stretching and growth that happens. So I'm really excited, but I've definitely felt more physically tired in the last 3 months than I have all year. But I mean, we're in COVID, so yeah.
Right. A weird time for many reasons right now. What's the project you were recently working on?
So I'm still working on it now. Actually, the Seattle weather has played an interesting turn with scheduling. Right now, I'm working on a mural with mixed media artist, photographer Melvin Freeman. So he has I think it's a 200-foot long space in Seattle off 23rd in Massachusetts in the Central District. And so it's just a huge blank wall. And so he applied for the public art call, I think, almost 2 years ago to commemorate the Central District. And so he has these 3-foot giant enamel, maybe porcelain letters that have photographs of historical photographs of Black people from the 1900s all the way to present day. And so those photographs are kind of collaged into each letter and tell a story. And so my piece of it is doing the mural behind those letters, and I'm painting water. So I've been doing that for the last 2.5 weeks. And today is actually the last, I have to finish by tonight.
Oh my gosh.
I know. In terms of reflecting on it and all this perfect timing, but definitely once this is over and hopefully the rain stops, I'll go and put my finishing touches. So yeah.
I didn't even, because you're in Seattle, right? So thinking about how weather affects installation, it's just such a different thing there.
And you'd think that by July, what's today? July 9th, that we'd be in summer. I mean, we kind of are, but I feel every 5 days, it's rainy, cloudy, and we get small peaks of sun. So I think even for Seattle, this is a very, very mild summer. So I'm hoping that Seattle really brings it in August, because I literally switched out my winter wardrobe for my summer wardrobe. And because we're in this pandemic, I'm just looking at all these beautiful dresses and sandals that I'll never be able to wear. So it's bittersweet, but it is what it is.
That's exciting that you have a project right now, because I know a lot of artists had projects postponed.
Yeah, I'm so happy, so blessed. I think it's also been really great to engage with the public also, just people who are driving by and honking and, and then I kind of got into this mode. I was oh, all the honks are for me. And then there actually was a honk for traffic. And I was okay, big head, bring it down. But yeah, it's really been great. It's been an interesting kind of balance of managing both my ongoing projects like that, really just me and my studio, with also managing like the schedule with executing like this mural. So that's been an interesting journey. And I think I'm just having to like learn along the way.
How have you started to manage your fine art studio practice with your public art practice?
So I think my entrance into doing public art has been interesting. So this, fall of last year, I knew that I was going to execute this mural with Melvin Freeman around this time. I also won an art call for the Midtown, which is supposed to come out, or when the building is finished, it should be around this time next year. So in my head, I already knew that I had 2 public art opportunities, and I was like, okay, great. Then COVID happened. And I feel there's been this interesting kind of peak with the pandemic and also Black Lives Matter. And because a lot of stores have closed down, they have all of those wooden panels in front of the windows, which has made public art more accessible. And so a lot of artists have gotten opportunities, both paid and volunteer, to display their art. And I think that that has been so inspiring and like really refreshing to see, because I think public art can just be very closed and really hard to get into. So that's kind of one layer to my story. But then the other half of that is, with all of these temporary Black Lives Matter murals that I've been doing, it's coming kind of unexpected in a sense, where like I can't necessarily schedule it. So I've had to find this balance of like, oh, this is a great opportunity. Do I want to take it? Is it paid? Do I like that establishment? Do they support, do they support Black folks like before the pandemic happened? Or are they doing it now? So in addition to kind of creating boundaries with doing murals that are related to like Black Lives Matter, I've also had to like, let me just create space to be in my studio, for me to just make art that makes me feel good. Because I also feel like a lot of people are patronizing like Black artists in a way. It's like, oh, I didn't really think about you before, but you're a Black artist, and so let me hurry up and get you on this project, or let me hurry and get your art on my storefront so that everyone can see that I'm supporting a Black artist. But I think if you really wanted to support an actual like Black artist's like life and their legacy, you'd be more understanding of like their schedule and their boundaries. So in a way, like all of that said, I've passed on a lot of opportunities so that I can be in my studio more. And then I've also created space in my schedule, knowing that this mural with Melvin was coming up, of saying like, hey, for the next 3 weeks, like I'm not available, but you can contact me after July 20th. And I even added in extra days, one for in case something goes wrong, in case the weather sucks, but then also just time for self-care and to turn my phone off and not answer any emails and literally just be. So I think that's a long-winded way of saying I've had to create boundaries to say no, and also to create boundaries of just having space for myself. And I think then my studio practice will kind of emerge from that.
I really like what you talked about with basically developing criteria for when you take on a project and when you might pass on a project, which obviously might evolve over time. I think that's such a good tip for other artists, because like once you start getting opportunities or whatever the case might be, like it's I think the whole thing around Black Lives Matter and more focus on Black artists, like I totally agree with you. It's awesome, but it's also like, where were you before? And like, why are you now discovering Black artists? I want to step back, because I think Black artists should be able to be the face of this and do whatever they want to do. And I want to support that. But I also am scared to even support something that's asking artists for these ridiculous timelines or might have ridiculous expectations, when I know that someone who is pursuing art, whether it's as a hobby or as a career, they're just not available the next day. It's just like not how it works.
Yeah, no, I feel I appreciate hearing that, and I feel your frustration. And I think that the kind of a part of having like criteria as an artist is setting those boundaries for yourself, but also the way that people respond, let you know like where they are in their personal development with understanding like what true support and allyship looks like. For example, someone asked me to paint shoes for their small company. And I was like, sure. So I checked them out, whatever. And I set up timeline boundaries. I was like, I have a lot going on right now, but these are the dates where I'd be able to support like how many shoes, do I have full like artistic expression over it? Everything was great. And then when I followed up the email and I was like, awesome, all of this sounds great. Here's my like price estimate for these 2 shoes. Crickets. So it's like, and it's coming from a place of, and I still give them like compassion and grace, do your thing, but it's also like, although you want to be able to say, oh, hi, we have these pairs of shoes which we're donating to this specific charity by a Black artist who was involved with the Black Lives Matter mural. Like all of that sounds great for the headline and for your PR statement, but did you pay the artist for their work and their time? Or did you expect that I was going to do that for free? And so that is also just very telling within itself. And it's like, okay, well, in a way, I hope that you're able to continue to do the project that you want, but I'm also hoping that whatever the next Black artist is, that they speak up and say like, no, you're going to pay me for this work. Yeah.
I think it's really smart to be extra wary of how someone responds because it is telling. And if they don't have a budget to pay the artist, then that's wrong. Like you can't expect an artist to do free work.
Small tidbit, I think a part of that is a lot of folks are reaching out to artists who may have never had a mural before or have never done public art like on that scale, or they're asking them to kind of, it's a beautiful ask, but it's kind of more of a reach, like maybe outside of their comfort zone. And the artist is like, ooh, I don't know what to charge for this. And I think that my tip is to charge per square footage. Had someone explain that to me back in March. And it, in terms of pricing your art, like there's so many variables, but I think that as a visual artist and the idea of charging per square foot, if that's like, I would say $7, $10, like whatever it is, just play around with numbers. And especially if it's a larger company, charge out the ass, like get that money. If it's, like a smaller company and you know who they are and you support what they're doing, maybe you charge less, maybe you don't. Maybe you can kind of like, if it's for like a concert venue, like a local concert venue, maybe like because it's a pandemic, you'll charge like a flat rate and then maybe ask for like free tickets for 4 or 5 shows in like 2022 or something like that. I don't know. But like just feeling confident that like, even though this is a realm that you're not really used to, definitely charge your worth and your time. And like food and transportation, had I known that like food and transportation could be part of like the budget line, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's a really good tip, to figure out what your baseline square footage price is, taking into account like the paints you normally use, how long it normally takes, all of that. And then you can increase it over time. You can adjust based on your client. The other tip that I get from a lot of mural artists is like paint a wall anywhere. If you want to do murals, you have to paint a first mural because otherwise you're never going to get a second gig. You have to show you can do the work.
Yeah. For sure. And I think also photographing the work as well. If you're able to secure your first mural, definitely have them cover paint supplies. But if you can have a friend, one who's experienced or not, find your best selfie friend, maybe not selfie, but like your friend who's always like taking the best pictures of you at like your birthday. Beg them to come and take really great photos of you while you're creating, because I think that's so like on the storefront side, like they're able to advertise you, but then you also need to be able to advertise like your work to your network and like put those pictures on your website or put them on your Instagram or whatever. Just like, I think the work in progress photos for people who specifically aren't artists and can see like, oh wow, like that looked like crap, and then she turned it into that. Yes, I want her. And I think that's how you get that momentum, and you can use that to market your next project.
That's a great tip. Have you been doing video?
Yes and no. So for some projects, yes. So like the first project that I did was through a nonprofit organization where I was volunteering called Urban Artworks. They work with, I don't want to say youth. They work between like age 15 to like 21. If I was 20, I would not want to be called a youth, but within that, like, right? Yeah, like young adults. And like they work with them and help them get opportunities and exposure and learn kind of more of what life as a muralist, a career can be as a muralist. I just butchered their like tagline, but whatever. Anyway,
I'll link to them in the show notes. So people
can. I worked with my mentee, Pua H, and Mari Shibuya. Mari was the project coordinator for it, and we did a really beautiful like mural on the backside of someone's fence at their home. And so that was the first mural that I created, period, but also this year. And so we took lots of videos and pictures of that. And it was such a wonderful experience. And I think not only for that being my first mural, although I've been a visual artist for 8 years, to work on that with my mentee who's just getting into her career as an artist and wanting to like dive into mural work as well, and kind of having like that being both a new experience for the two of us, but also very experienced with both me and Mari with the art. It was a beautiful like dynamic. So we have lots of videos, pictures. The murals that I've done after that, the one that I'm doing with Melvin, there's a photographer, and like he's amazing. So I can't wait for those pictures and videos all to come out. I'd say for some of the murals in between here and there, I was doing one project where I was like, this feels more like a melting pot of everyone's ideas rather than my idea myself. So I haven't really been kind of marketing or like talking about that one quite as much. So kind of just, it just kind of varies.
One thing that I see other mural artists do is like using their own hashtag or like having a hashtag for themselves for their work and making it clear how people can tag you, because that's how I've seen mural artists also promote themselves. Like they can say that they have this many posts on their murals and whatever. I mean, Instagram's a weird world, but I do think it's helpful in that way. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Hashtag the curly nugget.
Yeah.
So anytime I post, any type of art that I've created on Instagram, it's hashtag the curly nugget. So I'm trying to like build that hashtag, but I think it also in a way, it's like a social media verification of like, for me at least, like if my hashtag is on it, then you know that it was approved by me in a way. But yeah, I just try to reflect. I use my social more kind of as like my blog, and then my website as my home base. So you definitely get a kind of everyday intimate look into my life on my social, but on my website will reflect on a more like portfolio professional sense to verify like all the projects that I've done and like what I have to say about them.
Yeah, I was looking through your website, obviously. And I really like how you give more details and also link to any press around a project. Good job with your website.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like artist resumes are, don't get me wrong, they're awesome in terms of like really like on a chronological level of like really getting a deep dive into like what someone's doing. I don't really feel as if business professionals look at that. It's more of like within the art community. So in whatever way that like I'm looking to improve my website, but then also just thinking about it from all of these various perspectives, like how can someone get that same sense of kind of like history and information as to what I'm doing? That's what I'm trying to achieve with my website.
How did you come up with the curly nugget?
Oh, I was in college and, that's kind of around, I mean, Instagram was around, you know what I mean? Like, I'm 29, so I was in college and I was like, ooh, I gotta come up with like a really like fun and witty, I didn't want it to be like my like AOL, or like my like MySpace name, which was anyway. So the curly nugget, I thought about just on like a visual and like symbolic aspect of like who I am, like curly, my hair, I think my personality. A lot of my friends say like you never really know like where it is that I'm going when I'm talking. I could literally pull some story like literally out of my ass and you're like, whoa, that's how she connected that. So the curly. And then nugget, I think about like gold, value, also something that's like kind of heavy and of substance, but then also, to be honest, like a chicken nugget, like brown, brown little meaty bite size. Yeah, so the curly nugget. That's me and my essence.
You tag your murals with the curly nugget. What about your paintings? How do you sign those?
Yeah, so with my murals, I tag both my name and my social media, which is the Curly Nugget. On my fine art pieces, like this is an original behind me, I'll always sign my name. So I'm trying to create the balance of the Curly Nugget being sort of like an alias, kind of like Beyonce, and for how she has Sasha Fierce, but she's also Beyonce. Um, in that sense where my website is my name, Perri Rhoden. It's all of my fine art prints, fine art work will always have my signature, but my murals and my social media, I'll make sure that I list both. And if there has to be one or the other, it will be my name rather than my social. But I actually did hear that a handful of people are creating stencils out of like Venmo and their Cash App. Um, what's that called? When you have like Venmo and you can go in and like
Oh, the
it'll
like QR code or the
yeah, the QR code, or
yeah,
we'll call it that for the sake. Not saying it's wrong,
where you
just
can
saying.
scan it and then find
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
So some people are taking that and creating a stencil out of it and then putting that on their murals.
Huh.
So that's phase two of Perry creating in the streets of like, hey, you want to support me? Here's my code. And then like my name and my social media, and then changing that on my Venmo so that it says the Curly Nugget Perri Rhoden on both. So I think that's kind of like another way to have people, because everyone wants to like talk about how they want to support. Okay, boo, here's the way that you can support. And also here's like my handle so that you can get in contact with me, loop to my website and my social media. So
Right. It's like another way in and also it puts like cash first, which yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I hate it when people just post someone's work and they don't tag the artist or say who took the photo because it's like two people you should be crediting, right?
and I get even more irritated, Stephanie, when whomever is reposting the photo, where they're aware of the fact that an artist took it, they're aware of the fact that like an artist should receive credit, and then they say tag the artist. Like that is so infuriating for me, because it's like, why are you now putting work on other people to do something that like you should be doing since you're the one that's, and I feel like there's a way where like maybe I'm more annoyed with the demand and the language rather than like it being phrased in like, hey y'all, I love this photo. Do you know who it is? You know what I mean? A way where
Like, I can't find a handle on the mural. Does anyone know who the artist is? Like, but not like tag it, just like tag it yourself because I'm too lazy to look it up. Or
yeah.
Google reverse. I reverse Google image search all the time because I'm trying to figure out who made this thing.
And I think that's the other piece too, just as visual artists and creatives, like I've learned through other people, not that I had to learn this for myself, but of whatever it is that I'm putting out on social media, making sure that my name is somehow ingrained in the piece so it can't be photoshopped out. Or if I am posting a picture of something, right? If I'm posting like a final picture of like a mixed media canvas piece that I made, making sure that like it's either like tilted at an angle or if I'm in it too, so then someone can't crop out my name or crop me out of it and then try to plagiarize it as their own, or try to like make prints off of it or just share it and then no one knows that it's mine. So I'm like trying to continue to be as social media savvy as I can so that I can try to prevent as many issues down the road.
Right. And then there's always just putting things on the internet. You can't really control what happens to it, which is what's kind of terrifying about it. But also you have to share your work. That's how people find you. What's your earliest memory of creating something?
I was thinking about that this week. Back in the 90s, the Seattle Public School District, I feel like they did a really great job of prioritizing art. And so elementary school, my favorite classes were always something art related. And it wasn't just here's a pen and paper. It was like transferring like watercolor like onto paper or tie-dyeing or paper mache and or if it was like watercolor, it was like, I don't know, like draw elements of like who you are. I don't know. I literally was always coming home with art projects. And so I don't have one specific, like that was the earliest time I created, but whenever I brought something home, my mom would like put it on display in our home, similar to how some kids would like write an essay and once it's graded, their parent would put it on the refrigerator. Like that was the equivalent for me. So I think in terms of, although I started creating art in like my like early 20s, my mom really fostered an environment which was supportive of not only her celebrating the art that I created, but me also feeling very proud and secure in my parents supporting me doing creative things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know not everyone has that, so
Yeah, you had a good art curriculum and also validation, which I think is so important at a young age. Why do you think you went back into it when you were in your 20s?
Being raised in Seattle, Washington, I was like, how can I cuss? It's like, how the fuck can I get out of Seattle? How can I get as far away from this place as possible? So I applied to a handful of schools and ultimately went to Howard University in DC. Stark contrast to being around just, everyone says that like Seattle's so like diverse, blah, blah, blah. It's not integrated. It's passively racist here. And Black culture and anything that's not white culture is not celebrated or kind of supported in a way. And so I just wanted to be around, I was like, let me be around just Black people and see how that is. Also, I was like, DC is like such an amazing city. I can get to New York, I can go to Philly. I just was like, I just want to absorb this. So when I went in my freshman year, I was undecided. And then I decided to be a Spanish major because someone told me that like I can make a lot of money as a translator. like, oh, you can travel, do all this great stuff. I was like, awesome. To this day, I don't really know a lick of Spanish. And so someone told me, they're like, when you don't know what to do, just try different things. And so for one semester, I literally just took classes that sounded interesting to me. Figure painting was like one of those classes. And I still have the first piece that I ever made, and it's beautiful, but I'll always keep it. But looking at like where I'm at now, I was like, oof, I'm so happy that like I was supported in that space. I found myself in that semester staying up till like 3 a.m. creating, painting, and like not really focusing on my other classes. And it dawned on me, I was like, what if I did this? You know, I spoke to my parents, they were in support. And so I think it was my sophomore year, halfway through my sophomore year, I switched my major. So I spent 2.5 years at Howard studying studio art, drawing, figure painting, ceramics, a little bit of digital art. And I probably would have leaned more into digital art. However, I would have had to stay an additional like 2 years to get the minor in digital art. And I was like, I don't want to be on this campus for 6 years total. So then after I graduated, I stayed in DC for a bit, but it was really hard getting into the art scene while also trying to, you know, like pay my bills. As beautiful as DC is at the time, I found it really hard trying to it was hard to network on my days off, which were random and, you know, far between. And then just a lot of life happened in that short period of time. And so in 2015, I moved back to Seattle, and then I've been focusing on my practice more intensely ever since. And so really great. January of this year, I decided to pursue my art full time.
Wow.
Right, as before.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it's been an interesting journey with COVID because right when I made that decision, like the world stopped. But like I'm really, really fortunate and happy that all of the work, and I think that's the piece of it too, where this isn't always said, but for artists to be able to actually like lean into these moments, you know, with like the murals and Black Lives Matter or however we're being reached out to, it's because we've laid this foundation that's already existed. And now we're able to like receive these opportunities, or we have a website because we already have had one. You know what I mean? Like all of that groundwork has been in place. And so, yeah, it's been a really great, it's kind of weird, like celebrating my successes in the midst of all of the devastation that's happening, but still creating space for myself to be happy. And that's, I think, the balance that I'm trying to create right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really weird to be okay when so many people are really not okay. I think in capitalism, like we're all fucked. It's just like, it's like a weird thing to be like, well, I'm making money, or like I'm able to pay my rent or whatever, when you just know so many people are just not, and have lost their homes and are dying, particularly Black and brown people. I personally deal with that too, in the sense where it's like, it's basically forced me to have to be more upfront about who I am and let people know, like, I'm Chicana, like I'm of Mexican descent. It's not like I worked hard and you should too, because that's not what's going on, right? Like, it's like the system is just against Black and brown people. Like there's no amount of like meritocracy that would fix that. And that's where it gets like kind of weird, because I don't want to promote like my story, like I did it so you can too, because it's for me, I think it's a lot of luck, but I did work, you know, and like you did, like you said, put the foundations, and it's hard to hold those things together without making it seem like you're better than other people, or like somehow you worked harder, but also knowing that like you did work really hard, and that's why you're getting opportunities also.
I feel like the more that the people who are more conscious, aware of their positionality, aware of other people, it's almost as if language kind of it's a challenge trying to talk about it. Like in terms of like being aware, being sensitive, knowing your place in things, like it's like, fuck, like almost sometimes I don't even know what to say. And I think that, yeah, I completely understand what you mean. And like capitalism it is really interesting. And I think that specifically capitalism, like in the US, like if our country focused more on health and actually like taking care of the people who are here rather than on like finances and capitalism, I think that like, in my opinion, we wouldn't really be in the situation that we are with all these COVID cases. Specifically talking about like of that, like the numbers, I had to stop listening and looking them up at one point because it's just crazy. And I think it's because we've, restarted the economy too soon and everyone's like, and that's the part of that's most frustrating too, because I understand like the balance of we have to make money, right? And a lot of these like small businesses and a lot of these Black and brown businesses, and we have to have income in order to feed ourselves. But I also just get really frustrated when I see folks who are partying and who are like in pools and who are operating as if, especially when they're Black and brown. Like when I see Black people as if it was 2018 living their lives, it's even more frustrating because I'm like, this system is designed against us. And I think it's painfully clear, especially when you look at the rates of the people who are dying from it the most. But best I can do is wear my mask, make my art, and just try to stay hopeful. I think that's kind of the piece that's keeping me grounded and optimistic.
So how are you making money right now? And has that changed? Have you shifted your income revenue streams based on COVID, or how are you adjusting?
Yeah. So how am I making money right now? I'm making money through the murals that I'm doing. I still have commissions from different clients that I'm working on. And then through my website, I have my online shop, one that I physically manage myself. And then I have a third-party website. I don't love the third-party website, but I'm using that more as a opportunity to kind of get a sample of what folks are interested in buying. So then I can take that data and then find a way to buy those wholesale and manage them myself so that more of the money is going in my pocket rather than splitting the money with this third party site. And so that's kind of been my strategy over the last, I'd say like, whatever, 5 months, whatever, of making sure that like I'm managing my own inventory, doing murals, having commissions, and then kind of creating the systems in place so that I can partner with like local Black creatives who are making masks, where it's like, okay, I have these prints, you can make the mask, let's collaborate here. Or like one thing that I want to make are puzzles. I feel like puzzles have really helped me in the last like 6 months of just something that's not TV, something that I can do by myself or with my family and just zone out, listen to music. So I'm trying to find companies where I can put my artwork on a puzzle and just on things that like I actually like. So those are the ways that I'm making money right now.
That's a lot of different types of things. So I think it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about regarding being an artist, like a full-time artist. You're basically creating a business that has multiple types of little businesses within it. You have fine art commissions, the mural commissions, the public art stuff where you're applying to grants and things. Like the project you're working on right now, you probably applied like last year or beforehand, right? So like that timeline, and then product development. I mean, it's like a lot of different things that that you're doing, which is awesome. And I think a good way to diversify your income stream so that you aren't fully dependent on like in-person things or virtual things or physical things or whatever.
For sure.
We are in such a weird world where production of something might not happen because they can't get the shipment in, or all the in-person things might stop suddenly.
So in terms of what requires the most effort, and then work or income that requires very little effort, speaking at public events, like although it's nerve-wracking, like the public event, it's here, it's there, it's over in 2 hours. You usually know what like you're going to talk about. It's free press, and then you just kind of move on from it. Like I'm so sad that those opportunities, those like panel style events, I think that they probably are continuing to happen like virtually, but I definitely miss those because those were also great in terms of like exposure and like meeting folks, but then also just a really quick way to make $300 by just talking. So
that's a great tip. And hopefully people will, I guess, start paying, like, because panels are still happening. They're just online, and it's a different thing. I'm not really excited about going to a virtual panel.
I'm going to be in one in a couple weeks, so we'll see how that goes. But this is my first podcast interview. So I think it's kind of what I'm doing with like the third party website. It's like, okay, well, let's just dip our toes in and like see what happens. Do we like it? How's it feel? And so I think just as the creative, artistic, nonprofit fields, like we're all going to have to go virtual, like really just leaning in and kind of seeing what feels good is the best way to go.
Yeah, definitely. We're all experimenting right now in one way or another. Why did you pick the C in the Black Lives Matter mural?
I get this question a lot, and like I wish I had a cooler answer, but all of the artists involved, we were in a group text and talking about like, oh, like we're gonna start painting like this time on Thursday, and I think someone was like, so how are we gonna choose the letters? And then like everyone, it was almost like I missed the moment. Everyone was like, oh, I want the V, I want the M, I want the L, I want the A because this reminds me of my mom. And like, just like, how am I going to challenge you on a letter when like you've added this like backstory to it? So everyone was just like, I was literally just scrolling through, arrived 2 minutes too late. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the C. Like, no one wants it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just do my thing on that C. And I also like it because it's more kind of like it's curvy, and there is no other. It's the only C in Black Lives Matter. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna own this. So that's how the curly nugget got the C.
It looks great. I loved seeing that project. I think it was more representative of the movement and being diverse and like having different artists do different letters instead of just painting the same. It just felt more meaningful. How was it installing? Can you talk a little bit about the process?
Yeah. So Takia Ward and Joey Nix. Takia Ward is a multidisciplinary artist who's also from Seattle. She reached out to me, asked if I wanted to be a part of it. I was like, yes, let's do it. Joey, I didn't know him before this, so I'm still getting to know him, but he kind of helps with more of the technical side of like measuring out the letters, making sure they were like large enough, and all the logistics that came in place with it. And so I think once all of the artists were together in one thread, they were like, hey, the letters are like good to go. Y'all can come. Once again, I think it like rained. And so they're like, we have a small window on Thursday of like good sun before the rain kicks in. Just come through. We have materials. You can bring some if you'd like. If you buy materials, let me know. We're getting donations so they can reimburse you. And this, keep in mind, was at the Chop Chaz zone. So, and there were protests happening the week before. So in terms of really just checking in with myself, in terms of safety, in terms of COVID, in terms of my Black body being in this space. I do live at my family home, thinking about like going to this space and potentially like getting in contact with COVID and bringing that home, that was an issue. Also, like, nowhere on this earth is safe for me right now. And I feel safest at home. But even Breonna Taylor was at home and she was murdered. So I had to kind of mentally prepare myself for, am I going to pass up on this opportunity because of fear? Or am I going to pray for safety and just get in and get out? And so that was more of my thought process of going. And when I arrived, there were a ton of people. So in terms of like the inner germaphobe, I was like, oh, you were too close. They had all the letters like actually blocked off. And so there was this kind of layer of protection from the public where I was literally not necessarily surrounded by all the artists because we were in a line, but it felt like this kind of dome of safety where it was like, okay, I don't know anyone else, but I know no one else in the chop, but I know that all 15 of these artists, some of them that I met that day, but at least were aware of each other and there was solidarity in that. And so my thought process was, I can bang this out in like 3 to 4 hours. Put your headphones on, because with public art, people always want to talk to you, which is great. But I also just was like, the only way I'm going to be able to zone in and really like do my thing on this letter is if I pretend that I'm not around all these people. And I didn't quite know what I was going to do on my way there, but I just was thinking about, what's very me, what's reflective of my art right now. And that's color, it's line, it's creating like implied kind of textures, almost like a textile design. And so I was like, let me see what, because that's the other thing too, like not knowing what colors are going to be there, with most public art opportunities, like first you have to, not have to, but most of them, when it's for like a business, they want to know what you're going to create before you do. And then they are also kind of like more tricky about the colors. Here it was literally as if I was a blank canvas. What am I going to do? But I don't know the materials. So when I got there, I just kind of pulled the colors, similar as I do in my studio, colors that make me feel good right now that I'm just naturally drawn to. And then I decided to actually, this painting here is called Spotty Yachty Dopalicious. I'd move the camera, but don't want it to fall.
We'll link to it later if it's on the site.
But in it, I kind of created these long lines and have broken up the canvas into these little compartments and then created kind of like mini stories within each one, almost like a kaleidoscope of sorts, but within these small lines. And so I wanted to do a version of that, but one that would be able to kind of be seen from far away as well as up close. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to, as a new muralist, find that balance of wanting to apply my studio practice of like, this is canvas. I want like the smallest detail of really like getting in and making those lines crisp, but, and creating something that looks amazing up close, but with public art, making sure that like, yes, up close, it still looks great, but also thinking about it from various vantage points and making sure that the design looks just as successful from far away and not knowing. So the drone shots, not knowing how high they were going to be in the air, of just trying to create something that like felt good and that also aesthetically looked pleasing. So that's kind of how I came up with the concept and sort of my thought process while in the moment. And the chop was an interesting experience because I've been there 3 times now. The first time was when I went to install the C, and it felt kind of like a festival in a way.
The music festival?
Yeah, I felt really uncomfortable in a sense. So I was very anxious and kind of eerie because it wasn't a space that I had been to before. The second time that I went to the CHOP was maybe that following, like 5 days later, where it was still the which they changed from Chaz, Seattle, or Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. They changed it to CHOP, Capitol Hill Occupied Protest. And so that's its own thing. But when I was there on Monday, it still was CHOP. It was daytime. It felt more like a protest in a way, but it just was a very interesting, like, it was just a really interesting place because there were people who were walking around, but there also is this expectation of the CHOP, of it being this space of learning, of allyship, but then you also have people who are coming and wanting to visit it. And so the interaction that I experienced on Monday following was a older white man came through with the American flag and had a "Make America Great Again" red cap on and was silently making loops around the CHOP. And I saw him at first and I was like, y'all, like, let's still have this meeting. Let's still get our footage because we wanted to, in addition to the amount of followers that I got from that Thursday to Monday, I think I gained maybe like almost 6,000 in terms of the reach of people who started to follow me and who were kind of wanting to know more about like my stance and my voice and why I did it. That's why we all decided to meet on Monday to take recordings and kind of really share our voices as to like why this matters to us. So that's why we were there. And so then the second loop that this man made, I won't say a physical fight, but a verbal altercation took place with someone else. And he was a Black guy and he was telling the white guy with the flag to leave. And it wasn't, and that's the part which was so frustrating. Then everyone decided to like ally for him and help like get this man to leave. And so but then there were multiple people who were trying to like jump in and then who were yelling at each other. And it just was, imagine like watching a fight erupt and you're literally in like 20 feet of it happening. And it's kind of this moment of both shock, but also you're trying to like watch what happens, but then it's also like, ooh, like, are we safe? And after it was over, the Black guy was really frustrated and was just kind of yelling at the crowd and was saying like, why does it always take a Black person to say something is wrong in order for you all to stand up and be allies? Why are you here? And the crowd was majority white, I should say. And he was like, why does it take a Black person to tell you something's wrong in order for you to activate your allyship? You should have told him to leave before I even said anything. And I think that that's the piece where it's so frustrating because I don't think that specifically in the CHOP, I think the CHOP is really a small petri dish for what's happening in America. Like, yes, the protest happened, which is great. A lot of people were there. People were arrested. They were beaten. There's a young Black man who was killed there. And like, I don't even think that that's hit the news or that's not being circulated. And so it's like, why do Black people always have to be the ones to do the work? And I get that maybe like we have to tell you how we feel or what's wrong, but it's like, okay, now that we've said that, now that this space is created, now that you know that you need to be an ally, why do I have to tell you in the individual instances of when you need to like tune into that? I think, and that's the part where I just was like, I don't want to be here at the CHOP anymore. I'm going to go home. We can turn this to a virtual meeting. Love y'all, solidarity. And then the last time that I went to the CHOP was after it was vandalized. this past
Mural?
Sunday. Yes.
What happened?
This past Sunday, a local Black artist, muralist, community member, he decided upon himself that he was going to, in the art of trying to preserve it, seal all of our acrylic-based paint and artwork in an oil-based clear coating. Without reaching out to us, we're trying to figure out, is this worth preserving? How much effort is it going to take into preserving it? Who's going to pay for it? Because it's not going to be me. It's so damaged.
The oil coating is what damaged it. So you used acrylic paint. Everyone used just like acrylic, like house paint or something like.
Yeah.
Paint.
And spray paint. Yeah.
And spray paint. Okay.
And so the frustrating part is that our preservation plan was to come in, power wash, clean, retouch with the paint that we used and already have. And also, like, it's each artist created it with their own, artistic touch. And like that, I could not replicate the work that someone else did. Like, I would never want to retouch someone else's letter because I wouldn't be able to do it in their light and with justice. In addition to us sealing it, the issue is that it's been like maybe 2 weeks since the day that we created it to when he sealed it in the oil paint. So all of the bird shit, dust, tire tracks, gum, all of that was sealed in with the oil-based sealant. And that's why we're contemplating whether or not it's even worth trying to retouch at this point, and if we should just, it would be so much easier to start a new project.
Can you even remove the sealing now?
No, we would have to power wash the fuck out of it or sand it down. Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. We have a couple different meetings. And so Joey was more, and mind you, I came in just for like my individual piece of it. But in terms of, it was primed, I think power washed and primed before we got there. And so acrylic paint was the suggested like medium for us to use for it.
It was planned to basically be temporary as long as can last.
In my opinion, it came about in a temporary mural installation kind of way. Folks donated money, but they also donated paint. So the argument which has come up in conversation with other folks is like, well, why didn't you all use like higher grades of paint and all of that? And I believe we used Behr paint, which is available at Home Depot, which actually Behr Marquee is actually a pretty solid grade of paint to use for murals, in my opinion. But I think it also is just really kind of counterproductive and disrespectful or dismissive to say you all should have used, not saying that you have said this, but for argument's sake that like we didn't use like the highest grade of paint when we're in a pandemic. It's also art that's supposed to be for Black Lives Matter. And going back to the fact that we already had our own preservation plan in place to retouch with the materials that we use and to make sure that it was going to last longer and the city was also going to support. Like, had it been left alone, we would have been able to take care of it ourselves. My frustration is that the individual who did it knew how to reach out to us, but chose not to. And so I feel like the level of damage that's done, I almost feel like it's kind of unrepairable.
Something that they talk about in placemaking a lot is like lighter, quicker, cheaper. Instead of spending a lot of time and money hiring a bunch of designers to design a new plaza and do all this stuff, get the permits, all of that, let's just like do a pop-up something to see how it goes. And I really believe in that for placemaking, but it comes with these caveats. Like, at some point, you will have to figure out how to make something more permanent. And same with public art. Like, when there's a movement, like, you can't control how the work is done. You don't know. It's not that you're not thinking about the longevity of something. It's that it's a movement. Like, it's just things happen. And so it's ridiculous to think like, why didn't you think this through beforehand? I think this is so interesting because public art, I think a lot, and why I don't want to like only talk about public art, because I think of public art like institutional art, right? Like this organization puts you through a grant process. Usually it's like certain people go get those grants. Usually they're known and they've networked, and there's all this like, I think a lot of bad stuff that goes on and who gets those opportunities. But like public realm art is sometimes more democratic because like, especially with Black Lives Matter right now, it seems like more businesses are open to just hiring different people and being more conscious of it, which is instead of putting them through this whole like process, like applying. What you were a part of was basically a guerrilla style art project. As a collective, you took over the space. And I really believe in that as especially part of a movement. But then it's like, who owns the space and like who is allowed to say what goes on in a space? And if it's another Black local artist, do they have more, you know what I mean? It becomes like this weird hierarchy thing of who is more like allowed to have a say about something. Obviously, the people who did the work should have had the say in the work.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened.
Me too. And I think the most frustrating part is that in the world of artists, right? Like, I didn't even have to explain why acrylic and oil don't mix for you. Yeah. But yeah, to the general public. And I think also the way that some of these news articles are, like the headlines, like I used the word vandalize probably 15 times in that interview. They chose to use the word preserve over my word, which was vandalize. Had they used the word vandalize in the headline, it would have leaned more in favor of the artist. And so I think that sometimes the media really doesn't care, and they are using the story. And so that's a learning point for me too, where it's like the media will tweak the information that they hand for the agenda that they want to support. So on all of our social media pages and on the website that we're going to launch soon, is that we're all making sure that we're using our platforms and our voices to really express solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and to make sure that we're not perpetuating this kind of energy of bickering with this person. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about the art. The art is symbolic of the movement and what's taking place. And that's where I mean, where, you know, all of these different organizations and folks are interested in preserving the art. And it's like, where is that level of importance for the fact that Black, you know, for change, and for making sure that like Black people are not being, you know, hunted by the police. And I use hunted specifically because I believe that's what I see. And it also speaks to kind of this underlying note of glorifying the work that Black people do, and like what we do for like glorifying like our culture and our the products that we make, and capitalizing off of our talents. And it's like, in order for me to make art, I have to exist. And so how about we make sure that I can exist, and let's make sure that I can exist because I'm human, and because I'm a citizen, and because I breathe, and I have the same fucking body that like you do. We have the same organs, you know what I mean? And so like, if you want to monetize off of the shit that I make, like, fine. Like, not necessarily fine, but more of care about me as a person, and then we can get into this capitalistic society that we live in. And I think that is that's the piece of it that I'm feeling right now, where it's like, does the world even care? Because I think actions, and that's what I mean by like CHOP being kind of a petri dish that really shows what's happening in America. And I think that is just a beautiful example of what's happening in this nation, and the way that we talk about it, and the actions that we're making, you know, after that has happened. It's all very telling.
Definitely. I'm seeing this in a lot of situations across the world regarding like art that Black people are making right now, or that other people are making about Black people, which is a whole nother issue I see going on also. It's like, why can't you just preserve Black lives, and then you'll get more artwork and you can preserve that too, and that's great. But the baseline of like humanity is missing often. And to your point, like, where were these organizations before and just like sustaining Black artists in Seattle, right? Like, to be able to do work in general. I forget too that no one's going to step up. Like, no one, like the white person in the room is just not going to notice the thing for I don't know. I don't understand why. It's like so obvious.
Yeah. So then it then makes me think, Stephanie, it's like, okay, well, since you're like my phrase of like explaining stupid, I really feel like that's just my 2020 phrase. I can't explain stupid. So then it's like, okay, well, since you're not going to get the heart of the matter, do I need to dangle my art in front of you and literally say, like, in order for you to like get my art, you gotta give a fuck about me? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't, it's like now we're having to be kind of like tactical of white complacency. And I think that that may be phase two of like, of us just trying to make change. And I think that if that's what it comes to, then that's fine. Let's be strategic. Let's figure out how to work with what we have rather than trying to explain stupid to someone who just 2 + 2 is 4. Our lives matter. You should care. You should actually care, not just say that you care because other people are around. And so I think we're just gonna have to pivot and figure out a new approach.
Is there anything that you've been reading, any like books or podcasts you've been reading or listening to that you think that has been really inspiring?
I follow this page called Therapy for Black Girls on Instagram. And they have every Thursday, the lady who hosts it, she gets on Instagram Live and she'll drop like 3 tips or things for folks to like focus on for the week. And so I've been listening to that Thursday mornings. I'm actually starting a new book called, so I haven't started it yet, but I'm starting a book club with my sister, Too Heavy a Yoke.
That's such a good idea.
Book clubs? Oh, yeah.
With your sister specifically?
Yeah, it's Shaniqua Walker Barnes. It's like Black Women and the Burden of Strength. And I think that that book's going to just help me feel a little bit more seen and understood. And although I don't really want to have a virtual therapist, I'm thinking about I really want therapy in person, personally. But I'm thinking about starting that. So on the Therapy for Black Girls like website, they have a list of therapists all over the US. And so that's what they talked about today. So that's a resource I'm going to check in with later tonight when I finish the water mural. So I'm super excited.
Those are great resources. Thank you. We'll link to them in the show notes for everyone.
Okay, awesome.
Is there anything else you want to share?
For the creatives and visual artists who are out there, do whatever it is that your soul is calling you to do. And don't feel, I think sometimes, specifically on social media, we can feel as if we have to like commit to a certain time frame in order to feel validated in starting something. Like, oh, I'm going to do like a doodle a day for like all of August, or, you know what I mean? It's like, no, just dismantle that. Create some art today. Could be a doodle. It could be posting pictures of some flowers, or it could be you dancing with no one around in your backyard. Be naked, you know, whatever it is, like just free yourself and free your creativity for you, and regardless of anyone else's benefit. Restore yourself. I'm all about self-care. Which kind of leads to my second thing, which is I think that whatever boundaries that you can create to love on yourself, that's what helps me feel whole. In my way, it's like giving myself a hug. So the self-care that like I love to do before COVID was going to the Korean day spa. I loved it. Like usually like the week before my menstrual cycle starts, I'll just go. I don't want to be bothered with anybody. I'll bring a book. I'll just, I miss it so much. And so I'm having to try to like recreate those experiences here at home by taking baths, by like telling my family like, hey, I'm just probably not going to talk for like the next 6 hours, and I'll be in the living room just, or facials. Like I did a facial today, whatever, pedicure, wear a mask, be safe, tip well. If you do support, if you do go out into like the beauty and like salons, like take care of yourself, take care of them. And tipping well means over 20% in my book, but whatever. And I think the last thing I would say is I think that I read an article earlier today, and it was really encouraging. It was in the Seattle Medium by Christopher Paul Jordan. And in it, he was talking about how 2020 is the year of the rough draft. So like whatever it is that whatever ideas you have, take it from being in a notebook to like the next step and see if you like it, but also just feel really secure and not having to have that super polished, like, oh, this is like all the way like super like packaged and well thought out, and I want to have all these amazing pictures. Like, no. I feel like 2020 is the year of like, do it yourself. Just do it. And I think that level of kind of rawness and unfinished kind of quality to it, I think that is more of the like authentic, soulful art that I think we're all needing to see. We're needing to see celebrities like without their makeup, without the filters, like COVID, the beginning of COVID was really beautiful, and like seeing folks, like seeing their actual nails grow underneath all the acrylics, seeing all like the fake eyelashes fall off, seeing like men and people with like their beards growing and looking like, I literally told my cousin that he looked like, was it Tom Hanks in Castaway? I told him, I was like, I love you, but you look like Castaway. And because he's young, I sent him the photo and he laughed at himself. And like, I think it's in that sense of like, just make it, put it out there, make it for yourself, and then just feel good in it being a rough draft, just moving forward with that. Because I think that I'm hoping that 2021 and 2022 can be the sort of the beginning of whatever underground work that we're doing right now. That's what I hope. And that's the way that like I'm looking at it. So make art, self-care, and don't get caught up in it having to look or be packaged in a certain way. Just whatever your idea is, just implement it in its rough draft stage of it, just being raw and honest, and like feel good in that. So
yeah, thank you. And where can we find you online?
Oh yeah, so my website is perrirhoden.com. My Instagram is the Curly Nugget, and those are the two I can't handle. I've tried doing Facebook too, but it's too much. Maybe if I get an assistant or something like that, Facebook will be popping in like 2021 for me, but for now, Instagram, and then my website. On my website, I list places where you can find pictures of my work, murals that I've done around the city. I update my portfolio on there. And then I call it my Perri shop. That's where I will post, or that's where like I guess where I'll post things that I've made in my studio. If that's like I'm learning how to sew right now, because I incorporate like, I guess I never talked about that. That's okay. I incorporate like fabric, glitter, acrylic paint, watercolor, color pencil, all on canvas. And so if I have like smaller pieces, they'll be in there. And then if I have any prints, so like the Black Lives Matter mural, the letter C, I have about 40 prints of just those letters. And so I've kind of waited to finish this mural, but also see kind of what happens in these upcoming conversations. And then I'll post those to my website. So that's where you can find how to support me, where to get information, and then to follow me on social media with the Curly Nugget.
Great. Well, Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this interview, Stephanie.
Good luck finishing your install. I'm excited to see the final piece.
Thank you. Me too. I hope you have a great day, Stephanie.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks so much for watching this episode of First Coat. If you liked this video, please subscribe and check out the next episode in our playlist. Let me know what else you want to learn about public realm art in the comments below. And follow us on Instagram at First Coat Podcast or at Distill Creative. First Coat is a production of my company, Distill Creative. Check us out at distillcreative.com.